Bible worm, reading the Bible with Bible worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
And I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
Welcome to our summer series, Revelation and Resistance. This week we begin at the beginning with Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 20, which sets the stage so beautifully for us, and especially for me, who has never read the book of Revelation before. We contemplate the is-ness of God, one that is beyond time as we know it, and hold all of the evocative images and sound metaphors like complex treasures. We relate to the pain of holding in your awareness both the world that is and the world as it should be. And we wonder at the awe and fear that will follow when the veil is finally pulled back. Thanks for being with us. Hello, Bobby. Happy summer season.
Summer series time. Woo woo.
I was just thinking, this is not related to the summer series, but I just have to tell you this. I was having, before we started, this moment of like great Bobby appreciation. Like, what a treat to watch you like inhabit new wisdom of adulthood and in all these ways that I feel like I'm sort of still in this childishness. And so then this got into my head as like, maybe I could be like that too, but I would have to put on my big girl pants. And then I started thinking about what my big girl pants would be or look like.
Yeah.
And managed to completely avoid the actual question that I was asking myself about wisdom and what it should look like when inhabited.
What did your big girl pants look like in your imagination? Do they get like crazier or like more boring?
Oh, that's a great question. Because in my head, big girl pants have to be like hard pants.
Yeah.
But maybe if I get old enough, they can be soft.
Yeah, I feel they go at some point they start going the other direction. They get more colorful and softer and
maybe I can turn the bend.
Yeah.
Be soft and flowy. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. But it is to say I'm happy to have this new text reading adventure with you.
Yeah.
And it's really new.
It's very different than anything we've done together before. And so I'm excited about it. I'm glad you're excited about it.
Yeah. So we're reading from the book of Revelation. What's the name of the series? Revelation and
Resistance.
Resistance. It's fascinating. We've only looked at chapter 1 this week, or we're going to talk about chapter 1 this week. And already I find that a fascinating juxtaposition.
So what we're doing is roughly following the summer series from the narrative lectionary people at Luther Seminary. Mm-hmm. And so if people are following that series, our podcast should be mostly useful. Mm-hmm. We've expanded a couple of texts and we've changed the order a little bit. And we've switched out one text for another here in a few weeks. And so just flagging for people, like make sure, you know what you're doing relative to what we're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're just listening along and processing for your own well-being, then
the world is our oyster.
Great.
So Revelation, how about that book of Revelation?
How about it? Yeah. I appreciate so much you saying Revelation because a lot of people call it Revelations. And I don't know why that bugs me so. Like, it probably shouldn't bug me so. It's probably some sort of elitist academic something. But the title of the book, like John titles it, An Apocalypse of Jesus Christ, or a revelation of Jesus Christ. And so it is a revelation, not revelations. So, okay, I had that little bee in my bonnet. The bee has flown away, and I will let it go.
What should we know about this book, if anything, before we start reading?
Oh, Lordy.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what maybe we need to know, we can unpack as we read today's text in 1:1 to 20.
Okay.
A couple of things that may be worth saying beforehand. One is that the dating of this book is a little bit of a contested issue, as is true with many books of the Bible. The general consensus is that it probably stems from the late 1st century, maybe during the reign of the Roman Emperor Domitian. So sometime maybe in the 90s. Some people will place it a little earlier, maybe as early as Nero in the 60s. Some people later in the early part of the 2nd century. I don't know that it's going to matter overly much for us, but that's generally where we are. The second thing I think maybe is worth saying is this text has been very popular in American religious and popular culture. I mean, this text has engaged people's imaginations for a very long time, ever since it was written. It has had a particular manifestation in the last, half century in the United States in a mode that interprets it as predicting things happening in our own time. And we don't need to talk about all the details of how we get there, but I do want to say that I read this text, and I think we're going to read this text as we do other texts, which is, what was this text trying to say to its reader in its context? And then how might we find ourselves in that reading? Rather than what is this saying? Is this locust really a helicopter? That's not going to really be the mode that at least that I'm going to be in. I don't imagine that you're going to be in. So the relevance to contemporary life comes from what was it doing in its time?
Yeah.
And then things that it was doing in its time still apply in our time. And so I just don't want people to come in expecting that there's going to be a lot of talk about rapture and, who the Antichrist might be and that sort of thing.
I don't know. That'd be a fun conversation.
It would be a great conversation. And we might get to the Antichrist. I mean, the Antichrist actually doesn't appear in any direct way in the book of Revelation, even though it is very much what people think of when they think of Revelation. There will be a day in a couple of weeks, maybe next week, when we might talk about the beastliness of people. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see what happens. Well, should we just get started?
I think let's get started and we'll unpack it as we go.
That sounds good. So I am picking up in chapter 1, verse 1 and reading from the NRSV. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who testified to the word of God and to the testimony of Jesus Christ, even to all that he saw. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of the prophecy, and blessed are those who hear and who keep what is written in it, for the time is near. John to the 7 churches that are in Asia, grace to you and peace from him who is and who was and who is to come, and from the 7 spirits who are before his throne, and from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. To him who loves us and freed us from our sins by his blood, and made us to be a kingdom, priests serving his God and Father, to him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Look, he is coming with the clouds. Every eye will see him, even those who pierced him. And on his account, all the tribes of the earth will wail. So it is to be. Amen. I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty.
Whew.
Wow, that was a lot in 8 verses. There were so many times that I was like, maybe I should just stop. Well, no, we're just going to go. We're going to read through verse 8 and then we'll go back and unpack it all.
I was making a little checklist in my head of things we needed to talk about, and it just kept getting longer and longer until I forgot what it was. So.
Perfect.
Yes.
Great.
So I will follow your lead.
We'll see what actually happens there. The very first thing that I want to pull on here, Bobby, is this, right in verse 1, right in the chapter of the book, the revelation of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
It's not the word of Jesus Christ or the vision or the prophecy. Can you talk about what revelation, what that word means, what it's getting to?
This is a complicated issue. You know, the word there in Greek is actually apocalypsis. which is where the term apocalypse comes from. In our popular imagination, the word apocalypse has come to refer to like the cataclysmic end of history, like we're waiting for the apocalypse. That usage in our time comes, I think, from Revelation, right? It uses the word apocalypsis, and then that's partly what Revelation talks about. But the word itself, apocalypse or revelation, is getting at something else. It's not about the end of history. The root is related to the word for the lifting of a bridal veil in a wedding, the unveiling or something like that. And it implies that there is beyond infusing, I don't know how to talk about it exactly, the world that we encounter, the world as we see it, there is a deeper reality that we are not able to see. And so this book is lifting that veil that blocks our vision, that prevents us, that makes us see the world in sort of this hazy way. And it's showing us the world the way God sees it, like its true form, at least according to the author of Revelation. And so the revelation is like a revealing of the deep truths of the world that human beings otherwise might not be able to see. When I talk about this with my students, I talk about it, although they don't get this reference anymore, but about the Matrix, and like you're living in a world in which like everything is like computer generated or generated by the propaganda of the empire. And unless you choose to take the whatever pill it is, the red one, you can't actually ever see what's really going on. Revelation is like that red pill in the Matrix. It's like once you take it, you see the world the way it really is, not the way it's constructed. And then there's no going back, as we will see. That was probably a longer answer than you were expecting.
No, it's not. I mean, because I think that really gets to in some ways that gets to the core of a lot of what we're looking at in this introductory part is like setting those foundational, that view of the world.
Yes.
That you have to understand before you can get to any of what exactly the red pill is going to show you.
Exactly.
In this beginning part, Bobby, there's almost like it reminds me of the beginning of this Jewish text called Pirkei Avot that describes sort of how the teaching is passed through the hands of from God to who, and then to who, and then to who. Like, how did it get to you? Yeah. And so I was trying to uncover for myself the sort of chain through which this knowledge is to be passed. This knowledge that like it is something that is seen, it's shown, but then it's also spoken and heard. So this is what I was able to sort of uncover.
Okay.
I think. I'm already not sure that it's right. It starts with God, even though the first phrase says the revelation of Jesus Christ, because it says which God gave him.
Right.
So there's God, and then Jesus Christ, and then his servants. Well, no, it's God, and then Jesus Christ, and then the angel.
Right.
And then the servant, who is John.
Yes.
And then the speakers, and then the listeners.
Yeah. So ultimately, it seems like the revelation is for his servants, which is the readers, the listeners who identify with Jesus. And yes, that transmission is exactly what you're saying. God to Jesus, to angels, to John, to the reader of the text, to the hearer of the text.
I think that transition of the language of us as servants is, I don't know, it stands out to me. Not that it's been shocking. I just know over the course of our regular season, there were a couple of times that I really pressed on but we're not free, we're servants. Like we are, and not that the other texts in the New Testament were ever saying quite the contrary to that, but it's a matter of sort of emphasis, I guess. Yes. What do we mean by freedom? Yeah. What do we mean by servitude?
Well, that's so interesting, Amy, coming out of Galatians. How we've been talking about that. And then, as we go, we will see that Revelation has actually some pretty strong ideas about what a Christian should and should not be doing. They're not specific necessarily in the ways that Torah is specific, but they are. It's not like a freedom just to be. In fact, that freedom is very Revelation is very anxious about that kind of freedom in a way that you have been kind of pointing us to the last few weeks.
And then starting in verse 4, we get these incredibly evocative descriptions of God and of Jesus, at least evocative for me. And I wonder how these things, sit with you or sort of feel for you to have God described as he who is and who was and who is to come, which is so different for me than talking about God as the Father or the Almighty.
Can you talk about that difference? I know you were asking me, but I'm just curious how it strikes you.
Oh gosh, these are the things that make me sound like a crazy person, although maybe a crazy person in the same way that Revelation is a little crazy.
Yeah.
But it really is like, it's hard to put into words because it has me want to move my hand in a certain way. Like it feels like this sort of wide horizon. Like there's a gentleness and a totality about it, but it doesn't have any like edges. It doesn't have any harshness about it. Like it's just this consistency and like all-encompassingness. It's in my mind, like a very mystical notion of God's presence in the cosmos.
Yes. I really love that, Amy. Where it took my head is back to Exodus 3 and the revelation of the divine name, which, as you well know, is Ehya Asher Ehya. I am who I am, it is sometimes translated. Mm-hmm. It could also be translated, I will be who I will be. Mm-hmm. When it gets transposed into the Tetragrammaton, it's in the third person. It could be he will be who he will be, or he who causes things to be. Mm-hmm. And so it gets you into that that realm you're talking about the is-ness of God. Like God is an is.
Yes, yes.
And the way of saying it here, I really like, who was and is to be, which is really the same thing as saying I am. Mm-hmm. But the dividing of am into past, present, future, it just brings more texture to it in some kind of a way.
Yeah.
So it's a familiar image that is kind of repurposed in a evocative way that I think the way you're talking about that is like the deep sort of spiritual mystical presence. It's a really lovely way of thinking about that.
Yeah, it is so Exodus 3. And I think you're exactly right that naming these sort of tenses, these ways in which humans experience time, which in my own mystical traditions, we would say God, that's not the way that God relates to time. Like there's not a before and after and future. Like that's humans live on that timeline, but God doesn't.
Yeah.
When you pull back the veil, that's not the way that things really are.
Oh, I like that. So the was, is, and will be, that's our experience of God, but God's just an is.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Something like that?
I think so.
Yeah.
That we're trying to come to this meeting place of like a historical way of existing in the world or understanding the world, and then this way of being outside of time that is in the divine realm that we can't even wrap our heads around. And thank God knows this. And so just, it says, I'll just put it into the tenses for you so you understand what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And then this description of Jesus in verse 5 as the firstborn of the dead.
Yeah.
I really was not expecting the word dead there.
Yeah.
I was expecting God.
Yeah.
And so I nearly fell out of my chair. Bobby, how does that sit with you, that Jesus is the firstborn of the dead?
I love the way you say the word dead there. Like it's a little bit like, ew. Yeah.
Your parents are zombies.
That's the way you should read it, because the word that's used there in the Greek is nekron, which is
gosh.
Like, yeah, right? Yeah, so it's like the corpses, the firstborn of the corpses.
Oh my gosh. That's so weird.
I like the way you're sort of talking about your reaction, like the firstborn of, and you're like, oh, this is a lovely idea. Like, because firstbornness, is like the original, it's like a position of privilege. It's the, in a royal hierarchy, the firstborn is the one that's the most important. And so you've got this kind of like, oh, wow, this guy's really important. And then you get of the dead. And so then, like, it's already messing with your expectations. And we're going to see Revelation messing with our expectations, like, a lot over the next 6 weeks or so. The way that I read, in the Greek, that's just a genitive expression, which the of there can mean sort of different things. The CEB translation is the firstborn from among the dead. And so, like, he's not born into the dead, he's born out of the dead. You know what I mean? And
so it sounds less like parentage.
Yeah. So the way that I have been reading it is firstborn of the dead is a reference to his resurrection, that he was dead, he was a corpse among the corpses, and then he was born from among them. And so now he is alive, having once been dead. And so he's like Paul I know how we've moved on from Paul, but he uses some useful language in some of his letters about the first fruits of the resurrection, which is like the first one, which means there's more. And so this is the way that I'm reading. It's a reference to his death, crucifixion, resurrection. And then there's a little bit of a promise as well that the other corpses also will experience life again.
Oh man, that's such a really masterful twisting of my expectations. Yeah, because when you hear firstborn, you think of baby, and you think of the origin of Jesus on earth in a human body, which is itself miraculous. But this text has already sort of moved on from that miracle.
Yeah.
And is on to this next thing.
I mean, one of the things that we will see Revelation doing, or at least I will see Revelation doing, I'll see what I'll be curious what you think about it, is it is diffusing the power of death. And it's doing it right from the beginning, right? Death is the great power that people are fearful of, and it's the great power that the empire can wield. And when you start talking about people being born out of the dead, suddenly that power does not mean what it meant before you could start talking about that. Like, death is no longer that, like, oh, death, where is thy sting? That kind of idea.
So then I'm trying to understand the sort of relationship between Jesus and God in the different ways of their godliness in this section. And so we talked about God being this, sort of timeless eternity, sort of in sort of a mystical sensibility. And then we get a couple of places, language about Jesus. First is the ruler of the kings of the earth. And then it's actually a little bit unclear to me in the next section when it says, to him be glory and dominion forever, whether we're talking about Jesus or God. So it kind of muddies that a little bit. So let me just ask you how you think the ruler of the kings of the earth sort of is understood in the context of Jesus and maybe the proverbial Godhead here.
Yeah, wow, that was a lot in that question. That's so important.
I mean,
This first phrase about the ruler of the kings of the earth, to me, this is going to be really important throughout this text, because, the story is that the kings of the earth put Jesus to death. And so they have wielded power over him. He does not appear to be their ruler when you just think about the way history unfolded. But here he is, the firstborn of the dead, and then immediately after we get the ruler of the kings of the earth, which is subverting that sort of expectation, right? They put him to death as though they were his ruler, and then he's resurrected, firstborn from the dead, and it turns out he is their ruler. And so we have this sort of reversal of expectation about who's really in charge here, and who appears to be in charge is not necessarily who actually is in charge. We have this sort of, here's a lifting of the veil, right? Here's an apocalypsis. And so in the deep reality of the world, Jesus is, because of his firstborn from the dead status, is the ruler of the earth and we're of the kings of the earth. And we're going to see how that unfolds. The kings of the earth they're ambivalent figures in Revelation. They do a lot of bad stuff, as we'll see in Revelation. But they also end up in New Jerusalem at the end of the text, which we'll want to talk about in a few weeks. And so one way of thinking about the rulers of the earth is that they are misled in this text by the powers of evil, or the power of Satan, as we'll see. And so they are not inherently evil themselves, but they are confused about who their legitimate ruler is. And maybe they think they themselves are their legitimate rulers. And so once they realize that Jesus is their legitimate ruler, then they sort of shape up. But at the beginning of this text, they don't know that Jesus is their legitimate ruler, but we do, because John just told us.
One thing that I'm sort of sensing here, and we'll see how it plays out, is you well know in the Hebrew Bible, when you only have one, everything has to be concentrated on this one God. That God is a lot of things, and so encompasses both this sort of, we would say Ein Sof, like there's endlessness and this sort of infinitude that we just described, and also is Melech Melachim, like the King of Kings. Like God is the King. God is the one with dominion. God is the ruler.
Yes.
And here I feel like some of that is being shifted to Jesus, and God is being more clearly positioned as the infinitude.
Yes. I think that's right. They are clearly related to one another, but I love that way of talking about it. Is like Jesus is sort of, I don't know, like Revelation does not have a fully developed Christology or doctrine of the Trinity. And so some of the things that Revelation might say are not exactly what Orthodox Christian thought of a couple centuries later would say. I think the closest thing in Hebrew scripture that I can think of maybe is in Daniel 7, where you get that image of God seated on the throne with the like flowing white beard. And then there's one like the Son of Man who comes on the cloud to rule over the earth.
Yes.
In a Christian understanding, that one like a Son of Man is Jesus. And I think that that's the image that Revelation is working on right here, that Jesus is the one sent by the one seated on the throne, who is the eternal one. And so Jesus has some sort of eternal status or divine status, but here not in exactly the same way. Does that connection make sense?
Totally. And I think, not that Daniel 7 makes any sense to me, but I think Daniel 7 is the right place to be plugging into, in particular in the Hebrew scripture.
When John says in verse 7, look, he is coming with the clouds, like I think he's thinking, go read Daniel 7, right?
Yeah, yes. Yep. I think that's exactly right.
The other thing that's interesting to me is that when he comes on the clouds and people see him, their response of those who pierced him, that is Rome, I think, is to mourn. And I don't know really what to say about that other than just to notice it. But, there was this like vicious execution. And now that they understand something different, they see them on the cloud, there's a sadness. And I don't know if you could read it as mourning over what they had done. You could read it as mourning over their future fate. You could read it as like they're fearful now because they realize that they have done some things. But it is interesting that the arrival of Jesus evokes mourning amongst the ones who pierced him in particular.
I really appreciate that, because I think I felt a slightly different inflection based mostly on my translation. Every eye will see him, even those who pierced him. So like included in that, I took it as every eye who sees him, and on his account, all the tribes of the earth will wail. So it's, in my translation, it's not just the people who did him wrong.
It's actually that way in my translation too. I'm just interpreting loosely. So But I like where you're headed. Push that. So when everybody mourns.
Yeah.
Or wails. Yeah.
And maybe we just need to hold on to the question for now, but like what is bad? This was supposed to be good news.
Yeah.
What is it that's scary? I mean, there's a lot of things that'll be scary. Yeah. But I think noting it is
I think that's right. And I think part of it's going to end up being that people are realizing all of a sudden that they have put their trust in the powers that are not the real powers.
Yeah.
And so that evokes a lot of different feelings. And so here maybe we see them.
Hi, Hi, my name is John Weicker, and I am the Associate Pastor for Youth and Their Families at First Presbyterian Church of Durham, North Carolina. I am a Bible Worm supporter at the Bible Worm supporter level, $48 per year. And I do that not because we're on the narrative lectionary or even because I preach that often, although when I do preach and the texts line up, I certainly use the podcast. I actually use Bible Worm as my own personal devotion for the week. I'm someone who misses the deep theology and close reading of texts that I got to do a lot of in seminary. And in Bobby and Amy's work, I found that again. And so I listen on Monday mornings on my way over to church and then Monday afternoons on the way back as a way to prepare for the week, to do ministry, and to love Jesus and serve. I hope you'll join me in becoming a Bible Worm supporter too. And now back to this week's episode.
Okay, I am going to press us forward, even though there's so much in those first 8 verses already. Now I'm picking up in verse 9. I, John, your brother who share with you in Jesus the persecution and the kingdom and the patient endurance, was on the island called Patmos because of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet saying, "Write in a book what you see and send it to the 7 churches, to Ephesus, to Smyrna, to Pergamum, to Thyatira, to Sardis, to Philadelphia, and to Laodicea." Then I turned to see whose voice it was that spoke to me, and on turning I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the midst of the lampstands I saw one like the Son of Man, clothed with a long robe and with a golden sash across his chest. His head and his hair were white as white wool, white as snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire. His feet were like burnished bronze, refined as in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of many waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and from his mouth came a sharp, 2-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining with full force.
In that list of cities, I'm always so glad when I get to Philadelphia. It's the only one that I am confident
and
Smyrna. Yeah, there's some of them in Georgia.
I don't know if you're supposed to say Smyrna, because that just sounds like it's on the other side of, town.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Bobby, this opening, when John talks about being in the persecution and the kingdom and the patient endurance with them, I just have to raise up really quickly that it feels so much like the sort of mystical traditions within Judaism, that there is a sense of the world as it should be, and there is also a sense of the world as it is, and God is not absent from the world that it is, but if you are aware of the world as it should be, you live in this tension, and it's very painful it's painful to be in that tension, and that is the fundamental pain of human existence, to sort of keep working to try to move the world as it is toward the world as it should be. So I so much see there, like, the persecution is the world as it is, and the kingdom is the world as it should be, and the patient endurance to, like, be aware of both of those things. Yeah. So I'm feeling the mystical connections here with John's vision.
I love that. You have not always been a mystic in my experience of you, and so I love this new. That's not new. It's been developing for a long time, but I had not really processed when we decided to read Revelation that, like, this is a mystical text.
It's a mystical text.
And you are a mystic in a very real sense.
I have become a mystic,
and also an academic reader of texts, and so, like, this, like, you are seeing things in Revelation that I'm like, yes, that is it. But I would never have gotten there myself.
And it's fascinating to read it. Also, during this time, as you well know, that there's a lot of mystical writing happening in the Jewish world too. There are apocalypses, and they don't necessarily make it into the Hebrew Bible. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about this voice that was like a trumpet.
Yeah.
Okay. Big Daniel vibes, as you said here, even the Son of Man. In case you didn't get it before, now we get, Son of Man language that should really throw you back to Daniel. I'd love to hear just some of the specifics about this encounter that stand out to you. And I mean, I can raise up particular ones if that's how you want to do it, but there are a lot of details in here that have resonance in different ways.
There are. I'll give you a couple and then you can give me a couple. How's that?
Yeah, that's great.
So first of all, I just want to go back to what you were just saying about the sense of persecution and endurance. I love that reading of it. And I do think that like there is a way of being that the followers of Jesus in this text, people who follow God and know how the world is supposed to be, there is an internal sense of misfit, and that is experienced as suffering and persecution. I think that's exactly right. And there is a temptation, as we'll see, when you feel that lack of fit, to just give up what you know to be true deep down and just live in the world the way that it is. That's going to be a recurrent theme in this text. There is an ongoing question about whether there was physical persecution of Christians in this period as well. Certainly there was here and there now and again. Famously, the persecutions of Nero in the 60s, where he blamed Christians for burning Rome, and there was an expulsion from Rome and Christians were killed. Generally speaking, there was not widespread persecution of Christians in this period. And so we should not envision like the militaries in the streets looking for Christians or anything like that. But we well have this kind of persecution you're talking about. And in a very real sense, like being a mystic and being a follower of either the God of Judaism or the God of Jesus in a Roman Empire, in Asia Minor, in a polytheistic world, you are a misfit and you are a target in unofficial ways, every bit as much as in official ways. And so everything from, maybe being harassed or maybe being shut out of social networks, or you refuse to go to the temple because people might think you're a polytheist, but that's where you make all your business connections. And so your business suffers because of the choices that you make. Like there's all like a wide range of ways people might be suffering, not just like direct persecution, but social opportunities and all of those sorts of things. Making choices that hurt your bottom line.
Yeah.
He's on Patmos because of the word of the Lord and his witness about Jesus. Patmos is a little island in the Aegean Sea, sort of between Mykonos and Turkey.
Okay.
It's sort of off the west coast of Turkey. And we don't know a lot about Patmos. It does not seem to have been like a penal colony or anything like that. There's no like evidence of a prison or forced labor, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it seems to be the case that he's been deported from Rome to Patmos because of something about the way what he's saying or what he's doing with regard to the gospel. And so he got deported, put away someplace where he's no longer an inconvenience. And probably maybe he's in prison, but maybe he's just like exiled from his place. And he's there because of the word. And so there is some sense of threat in the Roman Empire that's here in this text as well. Those 7 churches that he speaks to in Asia Minor, those are major cities that are in Asia Minor is roughly Turkey today. And those are major cities. And if you look at them on a map, they go counterclockwise around the circumference of Asia Minor. And so if you did that like in the United States, it would be like, LA and Seattle and Chicago and New York and Philadelphia and Atlanta and Houston or whatever it would be. So exactly why those 7 churches, not entirely clear, but maybe like the number 7 is a number of completeness, as you well know, and they are sort of mapping out a territory. So maybe we're talking about all the Christians in Asia Minor.
Right, but it's like sketching out the circumference or something.
Exactly. You asked me a mystical question and I responded with facts about Revelation.
No, really important ones, because that is not what I was picturing at all about why he was on, this particular island. But I just wonder if there are things about his encounter with this Son of Man, how he looks or how he sounds or...
I'm going to put that question back to you because I've been speaking for a long time about other things.
Okay.
So that you can speak about these things.
Okay, I'll speak about some things. Okay, here are a couple things that stood out to me in terms of the sound. First, I'll talk about the sounds that are described. I'm having like a very sensory experience reading this section. So first, there's this loud voice like a trumpet, which maybe just means it was loud. Like this was not a whisper. This was not the still small voice. This was like someone blowing a trumpet in your ear.
Yes.
Okay. But there's also, I have this association of trumpets that sort of herald the beginning of festivals.
Yes.
And then also I have trumpets that, in the book of Joshua that herald sort of like the impending destruction of a city. And I don't know which, if either of it's a light touch. Like maybe it's just saying it's loud. I'm not sure what it's trying to sort of pull into my consciousness, but my mind went to all those different places.
Amy, you and I talk a lot about the multivalence of ritual. And in this text, we're going to see a lot about the multivalence of symbol.
Yes.
Like John could have just said it was a really loud voice, but he didn't.
Yes.
He said it's a voice like a trumpet. And so it's evoking all of those things.
That's right.
Can we pin it down? I don't know. But like it raised all of that in your conscience.
I think I so appreciate you saying it that way because it's not, I don't think we should try to pin it down.
Exactly.
I think precisely the point is that it opens doors. It doesn't pin anything down.
Exactly.
The other big door or another big door it opened for me was describing his voice later like the sound of many waters.
Yeah.
Which again, on the one hand, I'm like, okay, that could mean it was loud.
Mm-hmm.
We could be like talking about the waters of the deep, like those chaotic, primordial waters that God has been able to control as sort of being inside of this being in some way and used for God's purposes. Or maybe that all those things are all of a piece in some way. Like, I don't know what it would be suggesting. But then there's also like the rivers of justice and the power of those. But I guess I just get that sense of like the raw power, and it is just deeply evocative.
It reminds me of our conversation last year about Job 38 when God shows up in the whirlwind and talks about like the profound bigness of God. But then it turns out there's a lot of subtlety in there as well. Like to me, this sounds a lot like that, where these images, like, yes, he's loud. But I love that idea. Like my image in my head is like when you visit Niagara Falls and you're standing next to all that water rushing over the falls. And it is loud and chaotic. But I love what you're saying about thinking about different kinds of water that are all enveloped in that. Like that's really lovely.
And like the kind of loud at Niagara Falls is so different than the kind of loud of a trumpet.
Yes.
Like almost in the same way we were talking about the sort of infinitude of God and that more directed divine force of the way that Jesus seems to have been described in that earlier part.
Yes.
Okay, I could talk about this for way too long. Obviously, I'm having way too much fun. Other images in here that you want to pull out?
There's two. One is just the like flashing and the brilliant white things, which reminds you of the Tide commercial, the Mountain of Transfiguration in the Gospels. Yeah. And here we have like clothing that is gleaming and hair that is white. The white hair, I think, is an image that may be gesturing back to Daniel 7 as well. And so I don't really know what to say about that other than it seems to me like the little glimpse we got at the Mount of Transfiguration. Here, John is like seeing it like for real. The other image in verse 16, first is the stars in his right hand, which are going to turn out to be angels, as we'll see in a minute. But the right hand is power, and there's like stars there. And then my favorite image is the sharp two-edged sword coming out of his mouth. And so here you have it's a military image, but then it's immediately undermined by the mouthness of it, right? Like I tell my students, like if you're ever threatened with your life and you have a choice of a weapon, do not choose a mouth sword because it is exceedingly awkward to fight with,
And dangerous. You could really easily hurt yourself.
Yeah. So here we have an image that's clearly not exactly a military image. It's about the speaking of truth. And so Jesus speaks in such a way that it can cut you to the quick. And it's got two edges, which I read as it can cut for you, but it could also cut against you. And so we'll see when we get into the letters that there is this kind of like, you're doing some good things, you're doing some bad things. And so like the word of truth that Jesus speaks is a cutting truth, and it can be good for you, or it can be threatening to you. It can protect you, or it can, punish you. And so it's setting as the stage in that way.
I really love that. I was so fascinated with that appearance of that man himself that I wasn't thinking as much of the sword.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to push us on, picking up in verse 17. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. But he placed his right hand on me, saying, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last and the living one. I was dead, and see, I am alive forever and ever, and I have the keys of death and of Hades. Now write what you have seen, what is and what is to take place after this. As for the mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches." Oh, man. Okay. So I am fascinated at the language that this figure uses to describe themselves. I am the first and the last.
Yeah.
I was dead. I am alive forever and ever. I feel like that combines the language that we used about God and the language that we used about Jesus. And it's now coming into this other being who I think is neither God nor Jesus, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Is this guy Jesus?
I read this guy as Jesus.
Oh, that changes things.
But I think you're onto something, which is like this is Jesus revealed in the fullness of his Jesusness. So before we had like God is the Alpha and the Omega, Jesus is the firstborn from the dead. And now here we have the one Jesus saying, I am the first and the last, and I was dead and now I'm alive. And so in my mind, this is a mystical grappling after the later Christian claim that God and Jesus are the same, like Jesus is fully God. So we're getting them as like separate entities, but we're also getting them as like sharing the same properties.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That is complicated.
Indeed. Yes. that is well said.
All right. I'm going to sit with that one for a while. I might have to meditate a little. I'm like searching my Jewish neshama, my Jewish soul for some kind of parallel that I can grab onto, but I'm not finding one just right now, but I'll hold on to the question.
In one of our previous episodes, I think you were talking about the Sphirot.
Yes.
And you were talking about Gevurah and
the Sphirot are like so in my head as I'm.
And you were talking about them as like emanations of God or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was toying with I know you're not talking Trinity, but multiple emanations of the one God is not the Trinity. Like there's 10 of them or whatever there is. And so I wonder if the sort of Jewish mystical way of getting at what we're talking about is like one of those Sphirot became embodied for a time. I mean, that's a big step. I'm not saying that's a small thing to think, but I was kind of wondering as you were talking about that, as like, maybe this is the way that Trinity makes sense to somebody who comes out of your background.
I remember when I first learned about the Sphirot in the Jewish world having a sort of like, that sounds like Christianity. Yeah. I just have to sit with it a little longer.
Yeah. I may have led us astray into Kabbalah, so
no,
we can.
That is the subtext in my mind reading all of this. So.
Sure.
When he says, I have the keys of death and of Hades.
Yeah.
So like I understand there is a sense that that the dead will be resurrected, and that Jesus's resurrection was just the beginning of a much bigger resurrection that is going to happen. But using the language of keys, the key of death and the key of Hades, that make it sound like a place or a sphere or like a plane of existence, is making me think back to that sort of veil imagery that you used before. Like there are sort of different like planes of reality, and there are veils between them, or some kind of separation between them, and we're pulling them back. So I guess I wonder, that particular language of keys, like, does that have that kind of like locatedness, that sort of like spheres of existence thing to you? Or do you read it more as just like a metaphor of the keys of death means we're going to release the dead from death?
I'm not sure that I know. Here's the image that's in my head, and it is quite a random one. And this has never been the image in my head before. I have young children, as you know, and so we read that book. Do you know this book, Goodnight Gorilla?
I am familiar with Goodnight Gorilla.
It's just, there's no words really in this book other than goodnight, whatever animal. But there's a zookeeper who's walking through saying goodnight to all the animals, but the gorilla has snagged his keys and is following him around, unlocking all the doors and letting all the animals out. And so, like, in my head, the zookeeper is like the Roman emperor who thinks he's in charge of all the animals and has the power over death and like locking them away. But in fact, Jesus is the gorilla.
Jesus is the gorilla.
Unbeknownst, like it has not yet been revealed to the zookeeper, but has taken those keys and is letting everybody free. I'm not sure that answered your question, but that's what I'm thinking of is everybody thinks that the Roman emperor has the keys over the power over death and life, but in fact, Jesus has it. Unbeknownst, only the reader knows, but eventually it will be revealed.
Bobby, I think I want to ask you a question that goes back to the very beginning of our conversation when you were describing what revelation means.
Mm.
Because before that description, I had a different sense of it, but I also don't really do this kind of thinking very much. So I just want to lay out how what the sort of image I had in my mind with it, to see if it has any ground to stand on in your universe, because it affects how I'm reading this part. And so I need to know whether I just need to let it go. I certainly have the image of like pulling back the veil when I encounter the word revelation or apocalypse. But I understand it, or had understood it, as sort of there is the plane of existence on which we live, like the world as it is, and there is sort of like a parallel cosmic reality that is like God's unfolding life, and they are related to each other, but there is a veil between them. And so when you pull back the veil, it's a little different than...
It's a little different than Goodnight Gorilla?
No. No, it's exactly like Goodnight Gorilla. No, I mean, at the beginning, I think you were using the language of sort of, now you see things as they really are. I guess I had not understood the word apocalypse as necessarily like a pulling back of the veil that is a key to understanding what is really true, but more a pulling back of the veil, like the world you live in is going to become completely enmeshed in the world of God, which is a beautiful thing and also a terrifying thing, because it will overturn what you have known. Do you feel like that understanding is congruent with what you said, or not really?
I think so. I will acknowledge what you already know about me, which is that I am whatever the opposite of a mystic is. Like I love mystical ideas, but I do not think like a mystic. And so like I'm always trying to put things in terms that I can understand. But what I think you're saying sounds right to me, that there is some kind of deep world of God that is present and like on the increase. And it is going to like at the end of the book of Revelation, spoiler alert, when New Jerusalem arrives in the presence of Rome, it's going to totally disrupt it. And that's frightening and also beautiful and hopeful and also fearful. I think all of that makes sense to me. But when I'm thinking about the sort of unveiling or the seeing what is true, it's that we can't see that world of God, at least partly because we are given a different world by the empire that speaks to us in symbols and metaphor. Like it gives us a world to live in, which impinges our ability to see that other deeper world that already is coming into existence. And if the veil is lifted, then we can see that there is this other world behind, beneath, within the world that we're living in. Does that sound? So I think both of our approaches
I think
relate to each other.
Yes, I think they are. I think they are congruent approaches. I feel that I would be remiss if I did not mention that the lampstands have a relationship to the temple, although I don't know why that is important.
It is important, though. Talk to us about it.
I mean, the lampstand is a piece of furniture in the temple, in the tabernacle that is in the holy area near the Holy of Holies. The light is to be lit eternally, kept going eternally. The story of Hanukkah is, obviously tied in with having fuel for these lampstands. It's so funny in the sort of decoding of the vision here. If you actually read Daniel 7, the quote unquote decoding of the vision is less clear than the vision was in the first place. Like it's just like, okay, that was 0% helpful, son of man. Thanks a lot. And here it's sort of so straightforward, but also leaves lots of questions. The 7 stars are angels and the 7 lampstands are the churches. That's all. That's, so we'll see sort of what else happens.
I'm so curious when you think about, so you're thinking about what the lampstands are vis-a-vis the temple. And now the claim is the lampstands are churches. So if you had to venture, what is that saying about the churches? Can you unpack that claim a little bit?
Let's see. Metaphor brainstorming. They are to be kept lit eternally. Interestingly, it doesn't actually ever tell you to do anything with the lamp in the temple. Like it's like the light, the point of the light is the light. You're not using it so that you can see this thing that you're doing. Which always feels, I don't know, lovely and resonant to me. They're formed of a single piece of molten hammered gold. Which seems quite lovely to me too. What else is standing out to you in that lampstand image?
But I think you're right on it. I mean, there's something going on here about if the church is a lampstand, then the role of the church is to shed light in the presence of God so that the realm of God can be more clearly seen or something like that. Maybe the world that we're living in, or maybe the fullness of the kingdom that you're talking about, maybe that's the temple in this metaphor. And so the church is meant to shed light on that so that it can be seen, or so that people can know the way. I mean, it's just interesting to me that the church's primary role right here is to be a light giver that never goes out, and that in some way is making the realm of God known and knowable. And I think that's going to become important.
And assuming that we're talking about the lampstands that are in the temple, they had 7 lights on each of them. So to say that they each had 7 lights and we're taking 7 of them. Clearly I'm so happy with that we're in the world of 7s, because it just indicates to me that we're back in the part of the Hebrew scripture mentality that I love so much. But it does seem sort of like we are magnifying, now instead of 7 lights in the temple, it's 7 times 7 lights out in the world. That seems like a rich opening too.
The one other thing that's here is these 7 angels of the 7 churches.
Mm-hmm.
They are in the hand of Jesus, and they also belong in some sense to the churches. There's an argument about what those 7 angels mean. But to me, the one that is most persuasive is that, we've seen in the book of Daniel and elsewhere that nations have their own sort of guardian angels, that there's like a heavenly realm where there is like the angels are protecting or fighting for or whatever, fighting against the nations. And this seems to be this seems to be the image here, that each individual church has it's like a guardian angel. And it's like taking care of the church, but maybe also it's reporting to God. It's like God's reconnaissance system. And so, angels have this function in Jewish apocalyptic literature as like note takers, like they see what humans are doing and they sort of keep a list, and then God can see. And so there's something going on here about that. I think there's an angel, there's an angel among you in your church, and it both is encouraging you and also sort of paying attention to what is being done or not being done.
Well, this was quite an introduction to Revelation.
Yes.
What do you want to leave our listeners with at the end of this first chapter?
It's so interesting to try to draw like conclusions out of chapter 1 of Revelation, because like really what Revelation is doing is preparing our hearts and minds for what's getting ready to happen, like the things that will soon take place. But for me, I think where this chapter is resonating with me is in this kind of fundamental idea that the world that we are inhabiting has a deeper, more fundamental truth to it than we ourselves are able to see. And even John, who can see it in this vision, has to have it interpreted. So Jesus is like, by the way, this thing you saw, that's that thing. This thing you saw. And so there is like a reality deeper than what we can see and understand. Maybe so much so that even if we could see it, we still wouldn't quite understand it and have to have it interpreted for us. That is underlying this kind of weird world that we are inhabiting at the moment. I don't know, the world of Revelation seems more and more accessible to me the further into the 21st century we move, and this idea that there are forces at work in the world that I do not understand, and the world is headed in a direction that I cannot grasp. And the message here is yes, and there is a deep truth that you do know, Williamson, and that is fundamentally even truer than you think it is, that is existing and unfolding and coming into being behind the present reality. And the powers that be in the world that think they have control over life, that think they have the keys to life and death, in fact, they are under the power of the one who really holds that, the one who is resurrected from the dead, the firstborn of the dead. Like, he has defeated the power of death. And even though the world does not yet know it, like the governing authorities of the world do not yet know it, their power is limited. Their power is illusionary. And this more fundamental truth is coming into being. Like, to me, that's a hopeful message, that there is something that I know to be true that is still true, even though it does not seem to be winning the day. And this call to like patient endurance, like part of that is just that. And we'll see how that unfolds in the weeks to come. But here's the encouragement to just keep on being committed to the power of life in the midst of death. And we'll see how that unfolds. How about you, Amy, reading this as a Hebrew scholar and mystical Jew, encountering Revelation for the first time? What is standing out to you?
I feel a lot of the things that you were saying also, Bobby, and there are some places where I would use different language, I think. More that I would use more sort of mystically grounded language than like sort of Jewish versus Christian language. But first, I want to say there's this song that keeps coming into my head by an artist named Ali Halpert called She Is on Her Way. And I guess the chorus that keeps repeating is, Another world's not only possible. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing.
Mm.
And like, I just have this image in this first part of the text is like being so close up against the veil that like you're so close to it, and you want it to be pulled, like you want to know it's better and you want it to be pulled back. And also this awareness that what it looks like to really pull back the veil and like allow the realm of the divine kingdom to be fully intermingled with the realm of the human kingdom means things like, this, I think it's from I don't even know where this is from in the biblical text, Karev Yom, the day is coming that is neither day nor night.
Mm.
There's a song that we sing in a Jewish community that reminds us of that, but it's that like these fundamental structures that we have oriented our days around are not real in the way that God is real.
Mm.
And so it's sort of to want both of those things, like to be up against the veil and know that our world is a disaster and know that we want what's on the other side of the veil, and also know that there's no way we can imagine what that is going to be like in our limited human imaginations. And so what is comforting and grounding to me in that is just as you said, is that this text has affirmed so clearly and so upfront that God was here before, is here now, is going to be here. Like, it is not that everything is changing.
Mm.
It is that what is truer than true is still here and consistent. And if we can orient ourselves towards that, then all of these other really significant changes will be more tolerable. Will be less terrifying. But we really have to orient in the right place.
That's beautiful, Amy.
I'm very curious to see what our role is in the unfolding of all of this in the imagination of this author.
Yeah. Amy, I have made a decision about our series that makes it jump around in the book of Revelation. And so next week, we're going to skip all the way down to chapter 13.
Okay.
And we're going to unveil the realities of the Roman Empire as Revelation sees them. And only maybe 3 weeks from now are we going to come back and read the letters that start in chapter 2 to these 7 churches. And so there's a reason why it works this way in my head. And so that's what we're going to do.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, I really love reading this text with you. I didn't really know how much I was going to love it, but
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, learning new things about Revelation. It's
going to be an adventure. I know. Yeah. It's going to be good stuff. Thank you for a really interesting first episode, and I look forward to what's next.
Yeah, me too. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
Join us again next time when we'll skip ahead a bit to chapter 13 and read verses 1 through 18, and then chapter 17, verses 1 through 6, to get a sense of where all this is going before circling back the following week. Until then, keep on digging.